Get started. Less people today. They changed the rules for the password, so I'm gonna have to figure that out next time I see all of you. But we're just gonna start off. We can use a chair or we can do standing. But the first exercise we're gonna get into is just going into a march. So your marching can be done standing. It can be done seated on the chair. Ideally, you have shoes that are non-slippery to prevent any falls or tripping. But same idea as we usually do. If you haven't filled out a ParkU Plus form in the last year, you can use that link that I sent in the emails. Besides that, welcome to Fitness with Familiar Faces. We get started with that march pattern. Today will be mostly just stretches we do in the standing and seated position. First one is standing or seated march. The next one that you'll try in this standing or seated position is a calf raise. So seeing if your feet are planted, raising up and coming down. Option one, in that standing position, holding on to a chair. Or option two, doing your calf raise from the seated position. Calf raises are good for people who are flat-footed. You should feel this in the back of the calf. People who do walking outside, gardening, this could be a warm-up exercise, especially for people that have pain at the bottom of the foot once they're in their walk. So that's the calf raise. And then the third exercise we tried, seeing if you can go feet planted, hands to the middle, stomach muscle pulled in, and adding your twist or your turn to one side, middle, and then other side. Also can be done if you're in a seated position. And that's good for stretching mid to low back. If you pull the stomach muscles in a little bit, you'll feel tightness in the ribs. That's good for flexibility of the back, for shoulder checking if you're walking, driving, or cycling. And the goal for today is mostly stretching out muscles. So those are the first three exercises. So we repeat that sequence, going back into your marching pattern. So different ways for the march here. Option one. Option two is to go into your high knee or your high march. Makes it a little bit harder for balance. And again, it can be done in a seated position as well. Just marching, sitting on the edge of the chair. But this would work your front hip or front thigh muscles. Same muscles used as climbing up a hill, walking, cycling, stairs. You try your calf raise. So option or level second exercise, calf raising up and down. Level 1, feet wide. Level 2, feet narrow. Makes it a little bit more challenging on the balance. And ankle stretches can help with lifting up the foot a little bit more when you walk. So harder to trip or fall if you're picking up each foot as you take a step. That's why we show you the calf raise. Yeah. From there, you see if you can go back to feet hip width apart, hands come to the middle, stomach muscles pulled in, adding your twist or your turn one way, middle, and then other side. Standing twist. Option one, especially if there's any shoulder injuries. Option two, those arms in front of you, rotating or turning. That's good for a warm-up for gardening, if you're going to be using your front shoulder muscles. If you do any racket sports, badminton, tennis, then arms out in front is a good option. And then that brings us to our first break. So if you need to grab some water, grab some water. I'm just going to unmute everyone here. and I'm gonna see what we're doing here. The last set of these exercises, and then we go on to new ones. So, first one we went into is just your marching pattern. Seeing if you can add that march, level 1. Level 2, high knee or high march. Level 3, if there's any shoulder injuries, then just stay here. But level 3 is to reach up high. Opposite arm, opposite leg. Works, it's like doing swimming shoulders in a pool. It would work your front muscles of the shoulder. And because you're using arms and legs, it would bring your heart rate up a little bit higher, and that counts for some cardio workout. Yeah, into our second exercise, going into your calf raise. From there, feet go wide. If you need a chair for support, you have one. But raising up and down. Feet wide is easier for balance. Feet narrow makes it a little bit harder. The hardest variation would put one foot in front of the other, so a tandem step, and then calf raising. But all of them is to help with balance, to help with picking up the feet when you walk. That's why we show you the calf raise today. Useful for people that have pain at the bottom of the foot when they walk, or people who have flat feet. Yeah. From there, those feet go hip width apart again. Hands come into the middle, stomach muscle pulled in. Add in your twist or your turn one way, and then your other side. Level 1, if there's any shoulder injuries. Level 2, arms out in front. If you do trying to prepare for any type of activity with your front shoulders or carrying. Feeling still that stretch in the mid to low back every time you twist. Your chin and your hands move together. Yeah. Perfect. From there, you're going to bring those feet and arms together into a tap. So this time, seeing if you can tap and tap, reaching across or to the side of the body. Same if you're doing these exercises seated, then you would tap your one foot out to the side and in front of you while pushing to that side as well. So standing, you continue what I'm doing. Seated, that version would be tapping and tapping. So different options for seated or standing. Tapping out. Yeah. The next one that we're going to try, from there, those arms come back. And you're going to go into a wide stance, so a wide march. Once you're in that wide march, see if you can add a row and a curl. If you're seated, you would still do your marching, but add more of a pulling motion. Pulling motions are good for posture, so muscles of the back. And sometimes people have difficulty or discomfort reaching up high. Then you would still add pulling back exercises. Yeah, so that's the row and curl. And then the third exercise we're going to do is for balance. So for this one, those arms come down. You have that chair for support, and you're going to see if you can go into your single leg balance. If you are using chair today for seated, try doing this exercise in a standing position. You have that chair for support. You'll feel the tightness or the strengthening in your glute or hip muscle. And we just try 15 to 20 seconds. that foot comes down, and then you switch sides. So balance exercises, climbing stairs, getting up and down from chairs, those are all ways to strengthen hip muscles, ways you can do it at home. It's important to strengthen hip muscles so that if you fall or get hit, the bones don't break as easily. You have some muscles to cushion the impact. Yeah. From there, that foot comes down, and then we repeat that sequence. So seeing if you can go back into the wide march or wide stance. Once you have that wide march happening, you add that row and that curl, going back and forth. It is good to do a wider stance for exercises because, again, it does target your outside or glute muscles, outside hip muscles a little bit more. So that's the benefit of doing a wide stance when you do a bit of exercise. So here we are doing our wide stance march or sumo march. And if you are seated, into just rowing and marching from the chair. Yeah. From there, those feet come back together. So as we started the class into that marching back together, and now you tap out. So seeing if you can tap and reach. For your front and middle shoulder muscles, every time you reach out to the side. And for the outside of the hips or glute muscles, every time you tap. Yeah. And then the third exercise we did in this sequence, the last one before our break, going back into your balance. So you have the chair there for support, seeing if you can go into your single leg. Ideally, your body is pretty still. If your ankles are shaking, then that's okay. Then that's fine. That's how you'll improve your balance. But if you find that your upper body is shaking too much, you might want to place a heel on the ground to make it more comfortable, or add a little bit more pressure to what you're holding on to. Then you switch sides. So the other foot comes up. Yeah, single leg balance. Great. From there, you take a breather, you grab some water if you need to. We're going to do a third set of those exercises. Let's see if I can. Yeah, so welcome for those who made it in. They changed the rules on the Zoom. They added, you have to do a password every time. So that's why there's some technical difficulties today. All right, so then we go into that third set of the exercises. So seeing if you can go back into that tap and reach. So for those entering the group or the Zoom right now, they did change the rules for the Zoom classes now. Now every time you have to sign in with a password. And today's the first day that that rule came to effect. So next time I see you on Friday, I will be more organized with those passwords and send that out in advance. So apologies for that. So the side tap for your hip or glute muscles. And if you're seated, you can still tap out to the side and reaching. The next one is a wide stance. So you go back into a wide or sumo position. That would be your march to start. And once you have that march, you would add that row and the curl, going back and forth. Yeah, so that rowing or pulling. And every time you bend the knees, you're working your hamstrings or back of the thighs. Sometimes people say they have tightness in those hamstrings or tightness in those thighs. Here we are doing some exercises to help that. Yeah, and then the third one of this set was going back into your balance exercise. You have that chair for support, different options. That foot comes off the ground, level 1. Level 2, if that's very easy for you, you don't need the chair. And level 3, we've done before in other classes, where you would do an airplane. But that's different levels, 1, 2, or 3. Today I'm going to show level 1 or level 2, which is just a single leg coming up. Then that foot comes down and you switch sides. So now it's the other foot. Yeah, from there you would release. So the next exercises we do are some stretches, full body stretches. The next one we're going to do is with the chair. So ideally standing, you would stand 1 or 2 steps away from the chair and you would go into a bend, stretching out shoulder, back, and thighs. Option 1 is to go back and forth. Option 2 is to hold it. And this is a stretch, a full body stretch for back of shoulders, low back, and hamstrings. A standing option or seated option, reaching across as far as you can if you're in a seated position today. Up to you which one you want to try, seated or standing. Just a few more seconds there. And then you'd release, those arms come down. Seated or standing. So standing version for a low back stretch, you try a teapot stretch. Option 1 is reaching down, feeling that stretch in the low back. Or option 2, if there's no shoulder injuries, is just like a teapot, feeling that stretch in the mid to low back. And can also be done in your seated position, whether you're reaching across the body or reaching down. Different options for the same stretch. You choose what's best for you. But then you're going to try to switch sides, whether it's arms or shoulders down, good if there is any shoulder injury, or teapot, and can be done standing or seated. Always breathing in and breathing out as you normally do. Yeah, that leg comes back. And then the last one that we do for those 3 is your runner's stretch. Front leg bent, back leg straight, feeling your stretch from the top of the hip down to the knee. Your heel is planted behind you. And once you have that position, you add a shoulder or chest stretch. runner stretch, standing, front leg bent, back leg straight, or if you are seated, your back toes digging into the floor, and you can still open up those arms. Front shoulder chest stretch. Yeah, then you switch sides, looking the other way, standing or seated, and then opening up those shoulders and arms. So front hip stretches, because we did the marching today. If you're doing walking, stairs, you would be using those front hip muscles. Yeah, you release and return, and we repeat these exercises for a third set, or second set. This one here, standing or seated version. The seated version is reaching out in front as far as you can, stretching around mid-back, or the standing version we did, 1 or 2 steps away from the chair, moving those hips behind you, back and forth, or holding that one, if that gives a little bit more of a stretching sensation and it feels good for you. But breathing in and breathing out as you normally do. We use this one for stiffness in the mid-low back. That's called a counter stretch, because you can lay across a counter. Yeah, from there you release. Going into a stretch more for the sides of the low back. Entering that teapot position. If there's shoulder injuries, stay here. If there's no shoulder injuries, option 2, more of a stretch with those lat muscles. Or both can be done from the chair. Feeling tightness on one side of the stomach or ribs, and a stretch on the back, on the other side. Yeah, from there those arms come down, and then you switch sides. So reaching down or reaching across. Always breathing in, breathing out as you normally do. Yeah, that arm comes on down, and then you try your last set of that runner stretch. Front leg bent, back leg straight, front view, side view, or chair view. And once you have that position, open up those shoulders or arms. That helps with a more neutral posture, feeling the stretch in the front shoulder chest. Yeah, then you switch sides, going the other side. Can be done standing or seated, opening up those front shoulder chest muscles. And all these exercises can be used as your exercise for the day, or a bit of a warm-up before you're walking, especially if you start feeling short of breath at the beginning of your activity. At low intensities, it might mean that you need a little bit of a longer warm-up before you start your actual exercise session. So these can be examples of warm-up or cool-down exercises. And then you release. Perfect.